Hare Krishna, very dear devotees. Welcome back once again to our series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pastrata Deshatarane. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, we are continuing with our mini-series on Stimulation for Ecstatic Love, and this will be part 54. Part 54. In last week's lecture, we discussed how the famous Simantaka gem was gifted by Suryadev, the sun god, to his devotee Satyajit in Dwarka. You may remember we discussed how that gem was producing so much gold every day. I think we gave the equations, what was being produced, but I was reading this morning that Srila Sridhar Swami, in his commentary on this pastime, he actually says that gem was producing about 780 kilos of gold daily. That calculates as 1,720 pounds of gold. Anyway, and we discussed how Krishna wanted to use that gold in the service of the citizens in Dwarka. Satyajit, however, was very greedy, and he didn't want to give the jewel to Krishna. Then one day, Satyajit's brother, Prashena, went to the forest to hunt, you remember, with the gem hanging around his neck, but he was killed by a lion, who then took the Simantaka jewel. Then the plot thickens. That lion was subsequently killed by Jambavan, king of the bears, who then became the new owner of the jewel. This is a very complicated pastime. Now, some people in Dwarka, mainly Satyajit, started blaming, accusing, spreading a rumor that Krishna had arranged for the disappearance of Prasena and the Simantaka gem. So to clear his name, Krishna took a search party out to the forest where he found Prasena's dead body. Then after fighting, 28 days with Jambavan, he took the gem and brought it back to Dwarka. Now at that point, Satyajit became very remorseful, remember, over his actions, and he decided to give his daughter Satyabhama to Krishna as one of his queens, along with the gem. But not completely satisfied with Satyajit, with his actions and his attitude, Krishna only accepted his daughter and not the gem. Krishna actually said the gem should stay with Satyajit, and the gold it produced would be used for the people of Dwarka. And we finished there. So, let's continue with our narration. This is like part 2. So, sometime later, some terrible news arrived in Dwarka. And the news was that the Pandavas, the 5 Pandavas, were burnt in a terrible fire in a house made of lac. Of course, we know it wasn't true because the Pandavas had escaped the fire, which was arranged by their enemies, Shukuni and Duryodhana. And being omniscient, Krishna knew this, but as part of the Leela, he immediately left Dwarka with Lord Balaram to go to Hastinapur to meet with Bhishma, Gandhari, etc., to offer his condolences. Now, with Krishna and Balaram out of Dwarka, some deeply disturbing political events started happening. Now this may appear a little odd because, well, we know Dwarka was one of the several homes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But, the Acharyas say, it was a big city, and big cities inevitably mean some politics. Of course, we understand that any politics in Dwarka are ultimately transcendental politics, but politics nonetheless. The Acharyas actually say that the only place free from political desires when Krishna was present, was our beloved Vrindavan Dham. This is because the associates of Krishna in Vrindavan, they lived in an informal village atmosphere and they had no political ambitions. It was just Krishna, 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 hey. There was no overflowing wealth, high-ranking posts, struggles for power in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. There, the Brajabasis, they lived simple lives, free of politics, and fully dedicated to Krishna. But Dwarka and Hastinapur were not exactly like that. And this was one reason we hear that Krishna said to his father in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:24-24, again one of my favorite verses. My dear father, our home is not in the cities, towns, or villages. Being forest dwellers, we always live in the forest and on the hills. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. So, what were the politics that began in the big city of Dwarka? Well, the Acharyas explain. Actually, Srimad Bhagavatam explains. We're actually learning all this from Srimad Bhagavatam. Two personalities started a conspiracy against Satyajit. They were Kritavarma and Akrura. Now, Kritavarma was a general, a great general in Dwarka's army, and of course Akrura was the famous personality who took Krishna from Braj to Mathura. So Akrura and Kritavarma, they went to a warrior, it's described, named Satadhanva. And they said to him, please steal the Saimataka gem from Satyajit. So Satadhanva agreed. Unfortunately, with this opportunity for big money, he himself became overwhelmed with greed. And one night he entered the home of Satyajit, killed him in his sleep, and stole the Saimataka gem. Now when this news reached Hastinapur, where Krishna and Balaram were, they left Hastinapur to return as quickly as they could to Dwarka. But back in Dwarka, at this time, Satadhanva started fearing for his life. So what did he do? He actually gave the Saimataka gem to Akrura, and they fled on his horse, which I was reading could run 100 yojanas without stopping. I thought, well, that must be very far, so I did some research and I found out that 100 yojanas is 300 kilometers or 186 miles. He could run that without stopping. Now, he ran like the wind, by the way. So now, when Krishna and Balaram finally arrived back in Dwarka, they learned that Satadhanva had fled the city. So they immediately left Dwarka on their chariots to find him, to find Satadhanva. Unfortunately for Satadhanva, when he arrived in the kingdom of Mithila, that poor horse, who was running like the wind, couldn't continue any further, and actually it collapsed dead on the ground. So Satadhanva, fearful for his life, decided to continue fleeing on foot. Now it's very interesting. When Krishna and Balaram arrived at the spot where Satadhanva's horse had died, they tied up their horses and chariots and pursued him on foot. I thought, wow. But then I read Srila Jiva Goswami's commentary at that point in the pastime, and he comments that it's not justified to chase someone running on foot using a chariot. That's not proper. You can't chase someone running on foot with a chariot. So they got off their chariots and started pursuing him on foot. So when Krishna and Balaram finally caught up with Satadhanva, Krishna immediately took his Sudarshan chakra, cut off his head. Now, meanwhile, back in Dwarka, Akrura and Kritavarma themselves fled, because they were afraid they might get caught up in an investigation into Satyajit's death. I told you it's complicated. So Akrura, he fled to his mother's home in Varanasi. And while staying there, the Saimataka Gem began giving many kilos, as we described, of gold daily. But of course we know ultimately Akrura is a devotee. So after some time he started feeling guilty that he was personally acquiring so much gold. So he began using that wealth to conduct huge yagyas, huge fire sacrifices for the people of Varanasi. And he started giving lots of charity to the brahmanas. As a result, he soon became famous as Dhanapati, meaning master of charity. But then Krishna sent a message to Akrura that he wanted that jewel back. So being the devotee that he is, Akrura came back to Dwarka and immediately gave the Saimataka jewel back to Krishna. So it's changed hands many times. But then Krishna did something really amazing. He reached out and gave the jewel back to Akrura. Why? Well, the acharyas say, and I'll quote them here, only a person who offers the Saimataka willingly to Krishna is eligible to keep it. So Satyajit didn't willingly give it back to Krishna, but Akrura did. So Akrura, in this particular version, he ends up the Saimataka jewel. So dear devotees, the episode on Saimataka jewel ends with, in the Bhagavatam, Srila Shukadeva Goswami declaring that anyone who studies, hears, or remembers this episode of Saimataka Gem will become free of any bad reputation in his life. Actually, I'll recite the actual verse. It's a very authoritative way to finish today. It's Srimad Bhagavatam 10, 57, 42. This narration, rich with descriptions of the prowess of Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, removes sinful reactions and bestows all auspiciousness. Anyone who recites it, hears or remembers it, will drive away his own infamy and sins and attain eternal peace. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki. Hare Krishna. So that's the conclusion of the version in Srimad Bhagavatam. But interestingly enough, there's another version by Sri Rupa Goswami in his Lalita Madhava. And I would be very happy to study that and give a lecture based on Sri Rupa Goswami's version next Friday. So stay tuned for part 3, Saimataka Gem. It's really, really interesting. And we'll be back in Vrindavan. Jai, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. So, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram Ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar Ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani Ki, Mayapur Dham Ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe Sham, Shri Prabhupada Ki, Jai, Dwarka Dham Ki, Vrindavan Dham